Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, we've got Karen coworkers, idiot nightclub owners, smug teachers, and bad bosses getting taught lessons they won't forget. It's a wild one today, so strap yourselves in, grab a drink, and you can send or link your posts right here. Let's dive in. For some context, I'm a 20-something British American male living in a very southern and undereducated part of the US. I've been here for a while now, and generally, when I tell people where I'm from, I get a little pushback because I don't really have a thick of an accent anymore. With that said, on to the story. I work in a small office, and we have a rolling line of temps that come and go. Most of them are barely high school graduates, or people with very little world experience. This is important for later. So one day, they bring us the usual parade of new hires around, and I do my introduction. I basically say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so. I'm one of the recruiters here at Company X. I'm married with 2 dogs, and I'm originally from the UK. Now, normally, this is a throwaway line that I use as an icebreaker, and normally it rolls right off. Until this one wonderfully young woman pipes up, the Karen of our post. She says to me, you don't sound British." And I want to note, she left out the T very purposefully. So I say to her, "Sorry love, forgot the coat and tails at home." The group kind of laughed it off, and I figured it was a pretty open and shut deal. But no, a couple of days later, word gets around that this chick has been telling a bunch of people that I'm not British and that I'm, quote, lying for clout. She said that I don't even sound British and that she's dating a British guy and she knows how they talk and act. So rather than be a mature adult, I do the very British thing of malicious compliance. If I need an intern to bring me a cup of tea, I would say something like, "Would you mind climbing the apple and pears and pouring me a cup of Rosie Lee?" On top of that, I start wearing 3-piece suits, a pocket watch, and a monocle I found at a thrift shop. I went super British. Obviously, about 3 hours into the first day, my boss wants to know what's up. So I tell her, and she finds it absolutely hilarious that she assigns that intern to me for the rest of the day. I kept using odd British rhyming phrases and sayings, and she would keep asking me to speak normal, to which I would reply, "But I thought you know how us British people act." She quickly realized her error, and we've been cordial ever since. Nowadays, I just keep my old red passport in my desk drawer, just in case someone pulls that stunt again. And for the record, I'm not British, I'm English, and a Scouser at that. I know what you're thinking, guys, the nerve of that Karen to try and gatekeep OP's nationality, right? Oh, you aren't from there. I know British people, and you aren't one of them. Like, some people need to really think before speaking. But guys, the malicious compliance OP pulled was so well played, wasn't it? Also, I love the fact that the boss found humor in what OP was doing and assigned OP that intern all day. Hopefully, she learned a bit of a lesson here. Towards the end of the year, my company sends a shiny HR email. Subject line in all caps. Use it or lose it. We had to burn our remaining PTO by the 30th, or it evaporates into the sun. Well, that same day, my manager announces in stand-up that due to quarter end, no one can take time off until the 1st. I asked how to reconcile that, and he just shrugs and says, "Talk to HR." HR says to talk to your manager. It was a really cute loop. So I opened the handbook because I'm a petty librarian when annoyed. Page number 14 has this little sentence that I never noticed. The sentence said, "PTO requests that are not explicitly denied in writing within 48 business hours are considered approved." There is also a note that partial day PTO is allowed in 1-hour blocks. Thank you, legal team. So with that, I submit 10 separate requests. 2 hours every morning next week, 2 hours every afternoon the week after, and a random Friday 3 to 5 to watch a plumber. and 1 full day to visit my mom. I sent the request in our HR portal, which auto-emails the manager and CCs a shared mailbox that nobody watches. I then went back to my tasks and set reminders. 48 business hours pass, no denial. The portal changes each request to approved, green checkmark. So Monday comes, and at 9:58, I put a cheerful note in the team chat. I say, I'm heading out, see you at noon. Upon seeing that, the manager pings me to basically say no, and to hop on a client call. I reply with the screenshot of the policy and the portal approval. That's followed by silence, and then 3 dots typing, and then nothing. By Wednesday, our calendar looks like cheese. Half the team remembered that they also had PTO sitting around, and they start filing it in little blocks. Meetings kept colliding with green bars. That's when finance realized if we didn't use the days now, they would be paid out at separation later, which they hate. HR then writes a new post saying we should coordinate, but that approvals that are already granted stand. My manager then called a huddle to ask why productivity dipped. I just said we're following HR's instruction to use PTO. He said he meant in November. I then sent him the original email time-stamped this month. He just sighed and he said he never thought anybody would actually read the handbook. I used every hour. I took my mom to lunch and my plumber fixed the cursed sink at 3:40 while I just drank some tea. The next week, a new policy appeared. PTO must be requested in full day increments during quarter end, and managers must respond in 24 hours. Thanks for clarifying, truly. Guys, I always love a good story where someone uses the employee handbook and it derails everything so hard. And just reading that OP said the calendar looked like cheese gave me a good laugh. But seriously, the fact that the boss knew about this and was like, oh, I didn't think anybody would actually read the book and use it against us. Shame on you, sir. You are a horrible boss. And this person, a good boss, comments, I used to encourage my employees to use all their vacation time as well as their sick time. I wanted my team to avoid burning out as it nearly took a year to get a new hire fully trained. So this happened years and years ago when I just graduated university. It recently came up while I was talking to one of my friends and I had to share it with you. After graduation, I had my main job and a side job at a large mobile phone company, basically retail but with phones. The shop was located inside a larger retail store as an island in the middle, and of course, a lot of people didn't know about it and didn't exactly visit our store to buy a contract or upgrade. Instead, they would go to the store on High Street, which was a lot nicer and bigger compared to our island. Also, a few important details about the store. The working times are usually 9 till 8 on the weekdays. Tills have to be shut at 8 p.m. Otherwise, it causes issues with accounting. Staff members, unless they're warehouse, cannot stay past 8:10 to 8:15 due to insurance reasons, and only the managers can lock the store up. Also, when you start and finish, you have to put the times in a machine, which compares them to your schedule. Same when you go for lunch. If you finish earlier than scheduled, then the machine will automatically put it as an unauthorized absence, and this is important for later. Anyways, on to the story. It was my last day at the said store. My manager Dan had decided to let go of me because I didn't attend a shift due to being in the hospital, and I was still on probation. I was told I still have to work the notice period, which was 2 weeks. A thing you also need to know is Dan had to create a schedule 2 weeks in advance per company policy. He can change the schedule up to the last Friday of the week, meaning he can change the next week's schedule on the Friday before, but not after. So Dan scheduled me on my last day on a 5 to 9 p.m. shift, when my usual shifts are 4 to 8. I of course asked him if this was correct, both face-to-face and in the team group chat, and he confirmed it. Now, a bit about Dan is he was never wrong. He also doesn't do anything but complain about everything, and he doesn't bother to properly train you or show you the ropes. So I kind of knew he made a mistake, but I decided not to mention it. Cue malicious compliance. So the Friday rolls around, and I'm hungry, so I decide to have a late lunch before my shift starts. I'm putting my order through, and I notice that Dan's trying to call me. I decline the call. I then finish my order to see that Dan's trying to call me again, alongside a few texts received from him. I decide to reply, and Dan says, "Hey, where the heck are you? You're not at the store, and it's already past 4 o'clock. And we have one of the higher-ups checking in to see how things are going." I reply, "Oh, I'm having lunch. I'm not scheduled until 5 p.m., remember?" At that he says, "Well, no, you're lying. Your shifts are always 4 to 8. I make sure of it, so get here right now. I can't stay as I have to try the food that'll be served at my wedding and create the menu." At that I tell him, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I really can't. I just ordered lunch and I'm waiting for it to be ready, and then I have to eat. I did ask you if the schedule's correct and you said it is, but in case you don't believe me, I sent you a screenshot and I'll see you at 5 o'clock. I did send him a screenshot where I questioned my times and he confirmed they're correct. I didn't hear from him until I got back to the store. At the store, I can see Dan talking to a higher-up person. Dan notices me first, and he waves me over as soon as I sign in, and he says he really needs to be somewhere else. He just needs to get to his office and get his coat. At that, I nod and then have a small talk with the higher-up. The higher-up says to me, "Oh, it was so nice of Dan to cover the start of your shift as you were having a family emergency. I hope you're doing okay." At that I say, "Family emergency? I'm not sure what you're talking about, but my shift had just started, as per the schedule." Hearing me say that, the higher-up's confused. He then asks to see the schedule, so I gladly show him the pictures that Dan's posted on the group chat. The higher-up then turns to me and another member of staff, and he asked if one of us is a team lead. If not, when did we start? After finding out that we're not team leaders and we started less than 12 weeks ago, the higher-up gets visibly angry. He stops Dan as he was on his way to leave, and he tells him that he can't leave the premises as it's against company policy to leave employees who haven't been with the company for 12 weeks unattended or to close up. Long story shorter, they kind of go back and forth, and in the end, Dan must stay. Otherwise, the company insurance isn't valid and there's gonna be a hefty fine. Dan has no option but to stay, meaning he was missing the food tasting. His soon-to-be wife was texting him non-stop. While the higher-up was there and while Dan was forced to do his job, I had a few more conversations with him and I brought up all the things that Dan failed to provide us training on. By 8 o'clock, the higher-up was pissed with Dan, and he was organizing a meeting with him and extra training for him. He was also put on a close monitor for at least a month. As everybody was leaving at 8, I was slowly getting ready. Dan tried to hurry me up, but I was mainly ignoring him. He was screaming saying, "The store needs to be closed before 8:10. Hurry up." That's when I say, "Oh, but you scheduled me until 9 p.m. today. I can't leave before that as the system will not allow me to clock out." At this point, he screams and says, "Well, you have to leave. We have to put the alarms on." To that I say, "I'm sorry, but since you fired me and I'm jobless now, I really don't want to miss any money. You scheduled me until 9 o'clock, so I will work until 9 o'clock. He then says, "Well, what are you gonna do? You need to leave." I just tell him I can clean the display models and the island looks like it's never been vacuumed. The higher-up was still there, and at one point, he gets tired of our back and forth, and he told Dan to cover me till 9 p.m. and stay in the store, and then change the hours in the system that I finished at 9 p.m. so I can go home. And the thing is, Dan tried to argue, but the higher-up pointed out that it was his mistake, and if something happens in the store, he'll be the one responsible, as he should have checked the scheduling beforehand. Dan has no choice but to follow the orders. From what I heard from one of my coworkers who I'm friends with, Dan left around 10 p.m. that day, as the system wouldn't allow him to log in. His soon-to-be wife also left him not long after. I don't know the reason why, but from what we saw from snooping around on Facebook, that she took the house and the dog since she never married him. I have heard that Dan now works as a personal growth coach, but not a very successful one either. Listen guys, I don't want to say that I feel sorry for Dan because that was a crazy fallout for a mistake like that. And I do get it, like if Dan wasn't such an a-hole of a boss, maybe workers wouldn't be so inclined to teach him a lesson, right? And that's the thing guys, always be kind to people because you never know when people will have their chance to get back at you, especially when you're a lazy, crappy boss. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, guys. If you were in this situation here, are you still gonna come in at the time you know you were supposed to be scheduled for? Or are you gonna pull what OP did and let the guy ruin himself and his marriage? After the software company that I worked for got acquired, everything changed. Before the acquisition, we had a wear every hat kind of setup. You would take a client from the first demo all the way through configuration, implementation, and training. Everyone leaned on each other's strengths. Some of us were technical, some had decades of subject matter expertise, and we could quickly mock up solutions before sending them to dev for finishing touches. It worked beautifully. Clients were thrilled, nothing broke, and development didn't have to chase down a million questions because we handled the translations for them. When things were slow, we jumped on support calls, and clients loved how fast everything got resolved. That's when the parent company steps in, and they reorganized everything into a strict single role type of scenario. And here's the problem. After the layoffs, I was the only person left who still had a ton of crucial knowledge and skills needed across multiple teams. Overnight, I became involved with sales, product improvement, product evangelism, implementation, development, data conversion, and support. At first, it didn't seem too bad. The CEO asked politely when he needed help, and he picked up my bar tabs when traveling. He also tossed me an occasional day off. It felt like teamwork, like he appreciated the extra work. But gradually, every single department began demanding my time, and no one asked anymore. They just blocked out hours on my calendar without telling me. Meanwhile, development started refusing to take action unless somebody spoon-fed them every tiny detail. Clients weren't responding fast enough for me to finish tasks, but instead of reorganizing that, my boss acted like I was choosing to wait around. She wanted documentation about my documentation about the lack of progress. At this point, I was drowning, and yet somehow everything was my fault. The final straw was my employee review. It was stellar, top marks across the board, and yet I got the same cost of living raise as everyone else. Meanwhile, sales was getting commissions for deals that I closed. At the old company, going above and beyond actually meant something. I had doubled my salary in a few years there. Now, I was miserable, broke, and underappreciated. And then, out of nowhere, the head of data conversions department called me. He said that people on his team kept seeing fast, high-level solutions popping up in group chats from some random guy in implementations. A client had even requested me specifically for a big financial data conversion, because the last time I converted their building, code, fire planning, and police data, it was flawless. They wouldn't stop gushing about how I did the work of 5 people by myself, and they even granted helpful little quality of life changes along the way. He offered me a job on the spot. I said I would think about it, and he said I could even start part-time if I wanted. He also said that he saw all the BS I was dealing with and would get the other departments off my back. I liked him immediately. Right about then, my current boss barges into my office, having seen the phone call on our internal app, and she demanded to know why I was wasting time. She chewed me out on open orders, about documentation, about clients I couldn't force to respond faster. I tried again and again to explain the impossible workload, and that's when she cut me off and she snapped and said, "I'm done with your excuses. Just do your job and shut up." And that's when I called the conversions head right back and I asked how soon could I transfer. He practically yelled, "Effing yesterday, man. This is great news." He then told me to take the rest of the day off, to grab a beer and to celebrate that he would handle everything. So I did exactly that. The next day, I informed every department and my old boss that I was done helping them. They just ignored it and kept adding things to my calendar, and I deleted every single one. I did my new job and I shut up. And things got ugly. Now, I'm not claiming to be a genius, but I was literally the only person who knew how to do a ton of the cross-department tasks. Everything starts breaking down. Instead of asking politely, people came at me with demands, even attacks, and I got combative right back. The support manager emailed with the CEO CC'd asking why I couldn't be bothered to help anymore. That's when I replied, for the same reason that you can't be bothered to clean toilets or recable the building, not my job. The old boss told me just do my job and shut up, so take it up with her. Sales even tried to go over my head to get me to do demos again, and my new boss just said, sure, if you come over here and do some of his conversions. Their numbers tanked hard. Support's average resolution time exploded from 2 hours to 8 days. Sales went from 85% success to under 25%. Development and product dropped customer satisfaction from 100% to 60%. And implementation literally couldn't install certain components anymore, leading to contract cancellations and refund demands. And then came the storybook moment. My old boss's boss, a childhood friend of the CEO, told me privately that the CEO noticed something interesting. They noticed all the departments that OP stopped working for suddenly saw their worst numbers in company history. Weird. He then asked what pushed me over the edge, and my old boss's boss explained everything: the lousy raise, the impossible demands, the idiotic documentation requirements. And the result is the CEO changed the raise system. From now on, raises are based on 1. Individual output, and 2. Department output. Anybody with negative performance numbers gets no raise. Some department heads quit outright, and others scrambled to change positions. Meanwhile, in my new department, I wrote several utilities that saved thousands of hours of manual work. Our metrics shot through the roof, and as my new boss put it best, we're driving this whole bus full of laughing asses straight to the bank. The new boss definitely sounds like a great guy to work for, and I especially loved his response to the sales guy's request for OP's time. With that said, I always love a story where the quote new guy takes over and ruins everything. Like, why in the world are they restructuring when all the metrics were looking fantastic before new management? Like, I will never understand the need to change things for the sake of, this is my house now, without looking around first. And guys, we all know the saying, right? If it ain't broken, don't fix it. Why don't some people learn? I'm a female, and I used to work as a door supervisor, which is a bouncer, in the UK. One of the places I worked at had this absolute idiot as its manager. He hated working with women, and the guy didn't know how to run his business. Me and my colleague John would discuss frequently the difference in how the manager treated us. Apparently, my uterus stopped me from doing my job properly. This went on for months, until one day, John calls in sick. The only person who was available to cover was Jill. Jill was lovely. She's had many years of experience behind her, and she was also the owner of the security company I worked for. At the start of our shift, Jill had arrived early, so I could show her around. The manager sees us, and he comes over, and before I could introduce Jill, he starts shouting saying, "I don't pay you to stand around talking like a bunch of old women. Get outside where you're supposed to be." Jill, to my surprise, walked straight outside. I followed, and then she turned to me and said, "He doesn't know who I am, does he?" I confirmed he didn't, and she says, "Good, don't tell him. Carry out your work as usual." Cue the malicious compliance. I did everything I could in the bounds of my job to piss this guy off. My company checks the bathrooms every 20 minutes, and he wanted every hour. So I was in every 20 minutes on the dot. I performed spot searches, evicted drunk people, everything I was supposed to do, but he had forbidden to maximize profit. I thought he was gonna burst a vein in his head. At the end of the shift, the guy was screaming at me like literal flecks of spit were flying. Then Jill walked in with her son, who's also the owner of our company, and the two owners of the premises we were stood in. The manager's face went from purple to white in seconds. The son signed off on my nightly paperwork and he told me I'd done a good job, and then said I could leave. The last thing I heard was the son giving Jill a proper introduction to the manager, who looked like he was about to throw up. And here's the fallout. The owners of the premises visited the place almost every week when we were working. Jill's son also would pop in from time to time. The manager kept working, but it was made clear to me that he was being transferred soon. Sadly, I left the area before he did, but that waste of space never even spoke a single word to me from that time on. Well, that sounds like a bonus for OP there, and it is nice to hear that the owners decided to do something with the guy. But in my opinion, they should have fired him immediately, and the fact that they kept him means they might be okay with his behavior. All I can say is there's no effing way that I would allow someone to scream at my employee like that and then get to keep their job. Absolutely ridiculous. I had the misfortune of going to a high school during an era where every school in the country was ordered to take part in a national effort to get kids exercising. Now, I was a very skinny girl back then, and I didn't care for physical education to begin with, so I hated the song they issued for us to use during exercise. It was fondly known as the chicken fat song. Look it up. During one miserable class, we were on the hard gym floor doing the blasted exercises to the really stupid song, and then it came the verse about push-ups. We did girl push-ups back then, which is where you'd push up from your knees, not your feet. And my knees were in agony from the hard floor. So I just quit doing any of it and I went on strike. I just laid on the floor while the dumb song played, and that's when the nasty phys ed teacher came by and demanded to know why I wasn't doing push-ups and bouncing around to that idiotic tune. I was still on the floor, glaring up at her, and I say, because I don't have any chicken fat. She tried to argue with me, but I refused and pointed to my bruised knees. And then she orders me into the locker room. As luck would have it, the vice principal, who was a real bee, came in the locker room during all of this. The instructor proudly pointed to her disobedient student and told the vice principal about my insurrection, at which time the VP smiled big and turned to me and she issues my punishment. She said to me, "You need to write an essay about physical education and turn it in before the end of the week." Her eyes even narrowed when she gave the orders and her smile widened. I just smiled back, even bigger than she smiled, and agreed. I then wrote a very detailed essay about what a waste of time phys ed classes were, especially if you factor in the time it took to change at the start of class, the limited amount of actual exercise time per person in team sports, which was less than 2 minutes as I recall, and the time to change out of gym clothes, shower, and get back to your regular clothes. I concluded with the reiteration that it was a waste of time, and I really wish I'd seen the reaction to the essay, but I was told I did a good job and I never heard another word about it. Oh, and by the way, I went on to become a journalist after high school. I've always loved writing, and I still write for various publications, and I still hate doing push-ups. Hey, the vice principal didn't say if OP had to write an essay about phys ed being amazing, did they? Like, serious props to OP for having the guts to do something like that. And this person comments, semi-related, but in middle school, if we didn't participate in gym class, we had to write an essay on a predetermined list of 6 to 7 sport-related things. I was a smartass, of course, and I took that list home, and I did so. I had 2 to 3 of those essays on me at any given time, and when I didn't feel like participating, I just grabbed one from my gym folder, handed it to the gym teacher, and waited in the adjoining hallway for gym to start. Some people are just too clever, I tell you. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitled People episode, where OP tells the story about the time his wife became a super entitled Karen. Guys, go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.